don't know what you see up there. And so hear all this rhetoric with China and whatnot, but obviously the Trump base doesn't really know their history pretty well. The collapse actually began with the Republican Richard Nixon, or at least the plan for America's collapse began under Richard Nixon, because don't forget that Richard Nixon presided over losing the Vietnam War. Richard Nixon was the same guy who visited the China, which pretty much marked the beginning of globalism and opening up America's middle class to other parts of the world. The downfall did begin under Reagan. It was fostered, it was facilitated through the economic policy of libertarians throughout the 1980s. But before you get to Reagan, you get to Richard Nixon's meeting with Mao Zedong and the Chinese Communist Party in the early part of the 1970s. And what Nixon and Mao and the CCP discussed was allowing China to take their people out of poverty with these factory jobs, which did not come out of nowhere. They came from something. They came from the manufacturing jobs that were in America. So what Nixon told them was that, hey, we're going to ship these jobs away. Many people. So we are back to connection again. Richard Nixon was discussing the collapse, the downfall of the American middle class. Mind you, this is the same Richard Nixon that stormed and hijacked and infiltrated, invaded the Democratic National Committee headquarters. They're a bunch of Jews! Democrats are a bunch of cheaters! Who invaded the Democratic National Committee? Who got impeached? Who would have been convicted in the 1970s for that? We all know the Republicans are the real cheaters. It's because you didn't fall asleep in your history class. You know history. You know where we got to where we are today. So this showed you how morally bankrupt Richard Nixon was. He knew China had a lot of human rights abuses. They're under an authoritarian regime, but the Republican Party seek to aid and arm the authoritarian regime of China. So before you point to Democrats and Joe Biden being the CCP sympathizers, just pinpoint to Bush and the Republicans and NAFTA and Richard Nixon's visit to China, because this was all about making Americans poor and making American corporations richer. This is the only reason why Nixon was in China to begin with. How can I make the billionaires richer? How can I help usher in the new golden era of you're a billionaire and you're a trust fund, baby? That's what it was. Because after Nixon's right-wing Supreme Court said that, hey, unlimited amounts of money is speech. Well, I think in the 1970s, you didn't have to reveal disclosures from certain amount of financial contributions, which were coming in from billionaires and people that are not even in the country, which is globalism. You think, oh, I have a voice in this government because I own a factory over there. I own people over there. I'm subject to big bad government regulation that wants to regulate the billionaires. And so after the meeting with Nixon to China, you had the right-wing Supreme Court making money speech. What did you have? These presidents are no longer real. You had the Republicans rigging the amount of oil in production. The world was brainwashed into thinking that the world was running out of oil. We all know the Republicans wanted to take Jimmy Carter out of office. Jimmy Carter was the last man who was not a millionaire who was president. Jimmy Carter was the last man who sent his kid to public schools. He divested from his peanut farm. Jimmy Carter spoke against oligarchy. See, this is how bad Ronald Reagan is. It all began under Reagan. it was absolutely going to get kickstarted to happen under Reagan. It really was. So you had oil rigging production. You had Jimmy Carter trying to make peace with the world instead of these hateful Zionists wanting war and big oil groups they had to seem like they were the guys behind all the wars in the Middle East, when it was really the guys behind the scene, but big oil still benefited a lot from it. And then after Reagan, and after let's give the tax cuts to the billionaires, after Nixon visited China for the billionaires, after he gives the tax cuts for the billionaires and explaining the deficit for the banks, it's like, hey, we gave the billionaires the tax cuts, stage one, next stage two, let's ship them off overseas. Ronald Reagan Democrats then pushed Bill Clinton to the center right. And then you don't even have a real left wing anymore. You've got Bill Clinton, and then you had the Nazi terror reign of George Bush, an Islamophobic fascist decade reign of terror, of hate and propaganda and bigotry against Muslims and war in the Middle East. And God told me to do this, and Americans died. You see, this shows you that fascism certainly began far longer than Donald Trump did, if in the 1950s that we had McCarthy-style raids. So this was happening a while back. This is when America was becoming a very far-right conservative country ever since Reagan. A full-blown path to hell and collapse into hell with the people. It's all about the billionaires able to monopolize a market, to take in more benefits, more and reaping more of the benefits. The middle class wages stagnate, and we have these factory jobs. This is what Richard Nixon did. This you do not get the
Bluetooth device is ready to pair.
You do not get the today without seeing how bad Ronald Reagan was, and how much that meeting with Mao transformed the world. That America was never, and this is the same Nixon that gave us the war on drugs, and Ronald Reagan continued it. You see, Republicans and their overly religious people saying, weed's gonna make you to be the devil, and all that. Marijuana is gonna make you be the devil, so we can blame the religious right wing for the war on drugs too. I am fairly convinced that even though all of this stagnation and phony baloney neo-corporate liberalism all began under Reagan, it really began under another Republican president. This was all deeply planned by the billionaires and the big oil sectors. They're all in this together. I believe the path to hell began with one meeting in China. Absolutely convinced. And I would just have to find my mouse to close the video, but I think I can do the touch screen there. It won't allow me. I have to reconnect to my mouse. So as far as I can say, it's done, and it's a question and answers segment. But the Democrats being all for China and all that, I understand. It really began with Richard Nixon. It certainly did.